So a couple months ago, I did this video talking about Nikola Jokic playing a perfect game, shooting 100% from the floor, and then somehow in the biggest game of the year for the Nuggets in the playoffs, he kind of did it again. Although in this case, it was a 40-piece with a ton of assists and 0 turnovers. And the turnaround in this Nuggets Timberwolves series within the span of like a week has been absolutely incredible. And before we talk about what exactly has happened in this series, why everything is flipped, we have to talk about the Nikola Jokic game, right? And the scary thing about this, if you're a Timberwolves fan or if you're the Timberwolves themselves, is they are out of options. You want to know why they're out of options? Because they tried everything in this game against Nikola Jokic. They tried Karl-Anthony Towns guarding him one-on-one, with Rudy Gobert roaming off the ball, something that was really successful for them the first 2 games. That didn't work. Then they put Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year, on Nikola Jokic individually one-on-one and just let everybody else guard their man. That didn't work. Then they tried to double and they tried to dig down, try to get the ball out of his hands. Made the right play every time, 0 turnovers. And quite frankly, we could go through everything. They could have gone zone. They could have gone box and 1. They could have guarded Jokic with 2 guys the entire way up the floor. It just didn't matter. He was having one of those games. And it's interesting because in the beginning of the series, he didn't look like this. And Minnesota had really figured out a way to guard him well. They were forcing him into turnovers and he was still scoring well. But the engine of the offense that Jokic typically is, we weren't seeing that in the beginning of the series. But what changed for him more than anything is just an incredible increase in his aggressiveness, specifically when he has Rudy Gobert on him. Like, you would think that Jokic would want to try and find some other matchups, try and find some other options when he's going up against the defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert. But really the most effective way that Minnesota had guarded him was to have Cat or Naz Reid guarding him and then Gobert roaming off the ball, because Gobert has the size and the length to disrupt some of the passes Jokic likes to throw, and that forced him to be aggressive as a scorer, which again kind of takes away this idea of him being the engine of the offense. The problem was, as the series went along, Jokic just got better and better offensively. He was scoring on Naz Reid, he was scoring on Karl-Anthony Towns, he was getting these assists to these other guys as Gobert was helping, and then like, okay, we have to try something different. Defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, go guard Jokic now. And Jokic was just killing him one-on-one. Now, to be fair, it's not necessarily like a negative against Rudy Gobert as the defensive player of the year to say that the best player in the world is absolutely cooking him in the post, because some of these shots, I mean, you guys can see them. Some of these shot attempts, some of the ideas that Jokic even has, some of the angles he's playing, like, there's just nobody in the world that can do this. It's not necessarily Gobert's fault. It's just the extent to which Jokic is a problem right now. And of course, the scary thing about Jokic is he's always making the right pass. Like, this high of a usage in an individual game, in the biggest game of the year against a great defensive team without any turnovers, is just unbelievable. And I mean, the way things have changed up since game 2 is kind of incredible. I mean, Minnesota looked like the championship favorites, looked like the Nuggets were done. Jamal Murray didn't look healthy, and now the Nuggets are 1 game away from returning to the conference finals. So a couple of things that have changed here with Jokic as the series has gone along, and then we'll kind of get to the rest of the series, see how Minnesota could potentially bring this back. First and foremost, there was a good amount of aggressiveness from Jokic in the first 2 games of the series, but he was missing easy shots at the rim. He clearly wasn't comfortable. He clearly had this mindset of, I still need to be finding other guys. I still need to be creating for others. I need to be looking to pass the ball more, because that's just his default mindset. That's been a strategy used against him in the past, is just, okay, let's make him be a scorer. Let's make him uncomfortable. Let's make him think that he has to shoot the ball 30 times a game. And in the first 2 games of the series, it was clear that that was kind of in his head a little bit. He was missing these shots around the rim. He was always looking to defer because that is just his mindset. But especially in this game, I mean, I think he had double-digit points just in the first quarter. He was attacking constantly. He wasn't even looking at his teammates a lot of the time because he wanted to put pressure on the defense just to start the game, and then he could look to find his teammates later. The other thing that helps too, in terms of the assists, in terms of the no turnovers, the Nuggets' other players are just playing better. I mean, Aaron Gordon has been incredible 3 games in a row. Jamal Murray wasn't awesome in this game, but he's been better certainly than he was in the first 2 games. KCP was hitting shots. Christian Brown was hitting shots. Like, it helps to have these other guys, these spacers around Jokic actually making shots, because through those first 2 games, it was, man, if Jokic doesn't score in the post or Jamal Murray doesn't hit a tough 2, we kind of can't score at all. So all those things coming together the last 3 games for the Nuggets, I mean, that's why they're the champs, right? Like, that's why they're on the quest to repeat. Now, moving forward in the series, it isn't just about Jokic, right? Like, it isn't just about the way that he has changed throughout the series. Defensively, Denver has figured some stuff out as well. No Mike Conley in this game, which certainly needs to be mentioned. And all that meant was the Nuggets didn't have to worry about a single perimeter player other than Anthony Edwards. Every single time Anthony Edwards got into any kind of an advantage situation, whether it be in a switch, whether it be he got a step in the ball screen, they were sending 2 guys at Anthony Edwards. They were totally fine with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels. They were totally fine with these guys being the reason that they lost. If Jaden McDaniels hit 5 threes, if Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit 5 threes, if those guys are driving to the rim and finishing, that's fine. They were okay with that. They just weren't going to let Anthony Edwards beat them in this game. And generally speaking, that strategy is fine. Obviously, with Mike Conley out there, it would be easier for them to just swing it, have another creator out there, and then create good offense from there. But without Conley out there, it's literally just Ant in terms of a creator, in terms of someone that's going to do something driving to the rim. Obviously, you have Karl Anthony Towns, but he's more of an advantage has already been created. Let me drive to the rim off this closeout. Let me, shoot this open three. And he had a decent offensive game last night, Cat did, but still, the Nuggets, I think, figured out how limited the Wolves truly are from a perimeter creation standpoint if you were able to take out Edwards. Now, obviously, Edwards is an incredible player. It's not an easy thing to do, but they figured out ways to do it. Now, I want to emphasize, series is not over. We still have a game 6. Minnesota looked incredible the first 2 games of this series, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to find that once again, and then we have a game 7 back in Denver. But it really does feel like a missed opportunity, right? I mean, Minnesota to be up 2-0 in the series. They win both of the first 2 games in Denver, going back to Minnesota, and then to lose 3 straight. This doesn't really happen. I think this would be the 5th or the 6th time in the history of the league that a team has ever lost the first 2 games at home and then gone on to potentially win the series if that's what the Nuggets end up doing. And really, it's tough. I mean, if you're the Timberwolves or you're their fans, because like I said, they tried everything from a Jokic stopping standpoint in this game, and it just simply did not work. So you got to continue to try and, do some different things, change some things up on Jokic, but also these other guys, like Aaron Gordon can't keep having these kinds of games. Like KCP can't keep hitting shots. Jamal Murray needs to go back to who he was in the first 2 games in terms of the way they were guarding him. And if the Timberwolves can find that again, they certainly have a really good chance in the series. One other thing to mention here, though, because I've seen this everywhere from Timberwolves fans, the officiating difference is certainly different, let's say, than the first 2 games of the series. I mean, after the first 2 games, I made videos on this channel and others talking about how they were allowed to be really, really physical. They weren't fouling. It's just some contact, maybe a guy throwing his head back, where typically they would call that in the regular season or maybe in some playoff games. They weren't calling that stuff anymore. And I'm not saying that the whistle necessarily got that much tighter over the last couple of games, but it certainly has swung a little bit more in Denver's direction because the Timberwolves' strength is their length, their activity, and their physicality, at least against this Denver team. And that's been toned down just a little bit. I think the other thing that certainly helped Denver in terms of why this series was able to turn around is because they had a significant amount of time off between games 2 and game 3. And that helped them, 1, just kind of regroup, but 2, I don't think Jamal Murray was very healthy in the first 2 games, so that allowed him to get a little bit more of a rest. And then obviously Jamal Murray wasn't suspended for game 3 when a lot of people thought that he should have. So there's plenty of excuses here if you're the Timberwolves or you're their fans. But ultimately, if you were told before the series started that you'd have a game 6 in Minnesota, a chance to tie the series up and go to game 7 against the defending champs, you'd still probably take that. Obviously not given how the series started, but at the beginning of the playoffs, certainly at the beginning of the season, if you told the Timberwolves and their fans that, they would absolutely take it. So going into game 6, I expect them to try a ton of different stuff on Jokic, try and limit some of the other guys, try and force him to be a scorer once again, and just not allow, Aaron Gordon, KCP, Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, not allow those guys to continue to beat you. If Jokic wants to score 40, he's probably going to do it, but you can't let these other guys hit open threes. I don't know. I mean, Jokic might just be that good, but to me, I feel like that's their best chance right now.